She was nominated for an Academy Award for her very first picture at the age of 18. In the 1940s, she was an MGM star, then a Broadway superstar, but most people know my next guest, Angela Lansbury, from her 12-year run as Jessica Fletcher on the TV series Murder, She Wrote. Angela learned her stagecraft from her mother, Moyna McGill, but her ancestry is not limited to show business alone. Little known fact about Angela is that her grandfather was the controversial British politician George Lansbury. Like both her grandfather and mother, Angela has always been a dedicated professional, and she hasn't stopped working since she made her first film over 60 years ago. Along the way, she's also earned 2 more Oscar nominations, countless Emmy nominations, and is the recipient of 4 Tony Awards for her sensational stage work. It is my honor to welcome the legendary star of stage, screen, and television, Angela Lansbury, next on Private Screenings.
A sudden whisper, that sweet refrain in every thought of you. The gentle flicker of light proclaims our only lasting proof. They still play our song in smoky places where memories drift sweetly out of tune. The every thought of you.
First off, I just want to say at the top what a pleasure it is to have you here. We've been looking forward to this for a long, long time.
Well, no more than I've been looking forward to sitting down with you.
Oh, well, good. Now, you have had one of the extraordinary careers. I don't know of anyone else that has triumphed so wonderfully in movies and stage and television as you. And I wanted to know how you perceive it.
I'm kind of interested and amazed, too, that I managed to kind of compartmentalize my career in such a way that it's in really 3 parts. Mm-hmm. And if you take each separately, there are those in the audience who don't know that I was in the first section, mm-hmm. and those who don't know that I was in the second section,
right.
but they only know me from the third section.
Interesting.
So it's kind of extraordinary.
Yeah, because also you weren't just in it. I mean, you really triumphed in it. I mean, very few people have had a success like Manchurian Candidate that people still talk about all these years later, and Mame on Broadway, and Jessica Fletcher on television. I mean, those were great triumphs.
Well, I always described myself as having been given incredible opportunities. That people were, big and kind enough to offer me things that just came out of the blue in some instances, right. that I didn't expect. But in my heart of hearts, I was hoping would happen. So those are opportunities,
right.
But
you once said that it was drummed into you early on that you could do anything. And where did that come from?
I think it came from my mother, mm-hmm. from Moyna.
Now, your mother was an actress,
yes.
Moyna McGill.
That's right. And she wasn't a pushy mother at all. She exposed me to the best always. She mm-hmm. gave me the opportunity to be taught in the best places and to achieve a kind of training that, I might never have gone and found on my own.
Now, you were born in London in 1925, and how did you get from London to the United States, and why?
Well, I've always described myself as being one of the bundles from Britain. I arrived as an evacuee with my twin brothers, and we arrived in New York City on August the 24th, 1940. And we were sponsored by a wonderful American family.
Now, your father had died.
My father had died in 1935, so just the 4 of us landed in New York, and we took off from there.
Was your mother now an actress trying to get acting work in New York?
Nope. Well, she couldn't work. She didn't have the papers. You see, she didn't have working papers. But what she did do was she was very clever, and because what she did was she would give lectures and she would do recitations, and she was hired by some of the best schools in New York to go around and do recitations. She did the White Cliffs of Dover. She'd do sort of heroic poems and that sort of thing. And sometimes she'd take me with her, and we would do scenes from Shakespeare. It was lovely.
You also said one time you were never really an adolescent.
That's absolutely true. I missed a whole chunk of growing up. I mean, I just grew up like that. And I was rather proud of the fact that I was considered a friend by my mother. She certainly lent on me a great deal.
Now, you were also singing then, right?
I was starting to sing.
And that was kind of supporting the family then, in
Yes,
a way.
it was helping to support the family. And it was on the basis of that voice that I really got started in my career, because I finished in drama school. There was a young man there who taught me a complete act that I could utilize all of my talents for doing.
Like a
various,
cabaret act kind of
Yes,
thing?
it was like a cabaret act. And I got a job. I was hired by an agent who got me a job. And it was up in Canada, up in Montreal. And
Doing your act.
Doing
So you're
my
what
act.
now, all of 15 or 16?
I was 16. I lied about my age.
Now, it's very interesting, too, because you've always said that you're basically, and were, terribly shy in growing up. To be attracted to something where you're in a profession in which you kind of have to show off all the time.
Well, if anybody asked me to stand up and sing a song, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Really?
No, because I don't have any shield between...
Because that's Angela doing it,
That's
right?
Angela, yes. And Angela isn't really this, or this. But if you give me a script and say, well, you're playing a person who is this, and so, I will study up on that, and that's what I will project. But we all have our little quirks and idiosyncrasies.
You also said one time that the one thing you always had confidence in was your talent.
Yes, I have to say that I did believe that I could do things. And that, my mother also helped me tremendously with that. And she said to me, you have the talent. Now, just use it. It works through you. It's going to work through you. It isn't you. Your talent is going to work through you.
An interesting thing about your mother, she was a working actress, and certainly one I was aware of when I would see her in movies who Moyna McGill was.
Yes, B.Mayer put her under contract to MGM for, I think she was there for 3 years, and she made a few movies there.
And she has a great moment in The Clock with Keena Wynn.
I have to have a license to drink a drink? Why, this city isn't fit to live. I mean, let's face it, after all, this country is going to the dogs.
Think you could run it any better?
You are, without a doubt, the most utterly exquisite creature it has ever been my pleasure to come in contact with.
Was there ever any conflict or competition from her?
Never competition. I think there was a certain regret. Very truthfully, I do believe so. Yes, I do. But the thing I remind myself, particularly when I suddenly became the toast of Broadway, you know, she had been the toast of the West End when she was a young woman and had given up the theater for a family.
Now, you spent a couple of years in New York, and then why California? Why Hollywood?
Again, I have to come back to Moyna. She ended up in Los Angeles. I was still in New York with my twin brothers. So she got in touch with me and she said, you know, it's much cheaper to live out here, and I think that we might have a chance to get into the movies.
Interesting.
She knew a lot of the English actors who were out in Hollywood, like Basil Rathbone and Sarah Allgood. So through a friend, I got into the studio, and on that occasion, I not only met the director of the picture of Dorian Gray, but I also met George Cukor, who was the director of Gaslight.
Okay, so now you met these people, and was it a slam dunk right away when they met you about Dorian Gray?
Well, let's put it this way. There was really great excitement, to be perfectly honest with you.
And you're 17 at this point.
I was 17.
Right?
And they knew my mother. You see, the screenwriter of Gaslight knew her.
John Van Druten.
John Van Druten. John knew her from London, from her days in the West End as a leading lady. And this wasn't some kid who came in out of nowhere. This was the daughter of an established actress, so that was a tremendous help. And George Cukor was terribly excited. He would talk so fast that he'd lose his place in what he was saying. Well, he was terribly excited when we first met. So, whereas I thought I was going to be ending up maybe having a chance to test for Dorian Gray, I tested for Gaslight instead.
Did you ring, sir?
So your first film then is Gaslight, George Cukor directing. And you're playing a rather seductive, saucy maid opposite Charles Boyer, who was considerably older than you were.
Indeed.
And Ingrid Bergman, who was also older. So you are in kind of a different age range.
Yes, very, very much so. So I had to act a lot more sophisticated and worldly in every sense.